Let's talk about episodes 13 through 15 of season 4 of Grimm. Will we see more cracks in Juliet's character as she becomes more of a hexenbiest? Let's see. Starting with episode 13, we get to see the return of Officer Warren. From the very first episode I did on Grimm years ago, the pig Vesson who burnt down those houses. This time we're dealing with a Vesson who can turn himself into like a fireball. He burns out the store and these two teenagers are stuck inside and gets killed because of it. Officer Warren was the one who was investigating when a couple years ago when a couple of events happened like this, and he was very close to catching this guy, and then guess what? He got put in prison, so he never caught him. And now Nick and Hank goes to prison to get his help again. So they get him out, and he's, helping them out, and they figure out from the books what this creature is. This story they tell from the books is talking about how this Grimm got asked by Peter and Paul, St. Peter and Paul from the Bible, to stop this man who was burning down Rome on Nero's orders. Also, we'll talk about on my book channel sometime another book that deals with that story called Quo Vadis. Great book, but I'll talk about that. That's not for this channel. But anyways, I just love how we have St. Peter and Paul. As someone named Peter, and my dad's name is Paul, love those two saints. And so basically throughout the episode, they're trying to find a way to stop this guy, and they realize basically if they use like a sunscreen type thing where they can burn onto they can paste onto his skin so he can't heat himself up properly, and they could stop him. And so they get a bunch of water guns and spray it on him, and he explodes from inside, and they just blame it on a bomb inside so that the rest of the police station doesn't know that, oh yeah, this man lit himself on fire and that's how he was able to do this. And the episode ends with them adding a water gun into the trailer along with all these other weapons. And I thought it was really a funny moment because you got to see all these medieval axes and swords and stuff like that, and then you just have this plastic water gun in the mix. I'm like, great, it looks awesome, fits right in, multicolored water gun. But I don't know, I thought that was hilarious. And the episode ends with Adeline coming back to town and meeting up with Juliet. And as we've talked about before, no one knows that Juliet is a hexenbiest, and Adeline didn't know, and so she walked straight into that trap and got her ass beat by a fellow hexenbiest. And love that scene, just love it. Though something I completely forgot about until watching it this time was you never actually get to see, before they start fighting, a reaction from Adeline at all. Adeline turns into hexenbiest, and then you get to see Juliet turn into hexenbiest, and then they start fighting. And I'm like, I watched the scene, I was watching it, and I'm like, hold on. You never get to see her reaction. You get to see later after she leaves and she's panicking. She's a hexenbiest? What? But I would have loved to see a shot, because I always for some reason, whenever I picture that scene, I always thought that there was a shot where Adeline was in shock for a second before then Juliet attacked and Adeline had to fight back, and it was back and forth again. But there wasn't that shot. It was just them attacking. I'm it would have been cool to have a reaction shot there where it's just Adeline turns into a hexenbiest, uses her mind to pick up the jaw and throw it at Juliet, and then Juliet returns the favor by then turning to hexenbiest and then dropping the jaw so it doesn't hurt her, and then you see Adeline's reaction what? And then Juliet attacks. That would have been better, but instead it's just she stops the jaw, attack. And it's I would have loved to see that one shot. I always just imagined that shot was there, but it wasn't, and I'm oh, that's too bad. And the episode ends with, Adeline leaving because she did not win the fight at all, but she managed to get out there. She managed to get out of there alive. The very last moment of the episode is Nick coming back and figuring out that Adeline was there and asking Juliet, "Are you okay?" And then Juliet reveals to Nick that she's a hexenbiest, and the episode ends there. Jumping straight into the next episode, Nick pulls out his gun at her, and she's like, "No, this is actually me." They have not much of a conversation because Nick's kind of just okay, and he just leaves. He's like, "I can't deal with this right now." And that's the first big issue. That's one of the reasons why. What happens with that, Juliet, I'm not going to spoil too much. You'll figure out by the end of the season. Or just go watch it. Go watch the series. But yeah, you figure out by the end of the season what happens. But one of the reasons why I can't put all the blame what happens with Juliet on Juliet, because Nick could have stopped it there. Juliet is still a workable person, and Nick at that moment decides to leave instead of being I don't care, let's try to work this out. Instead, he kind of just abandons her right there, and it causes everything to start going bad. So just saying, Nick is somewhat to blame for that. Episode 14 is dealing with these rabbit Vesson, off of the whole myth of, the rabbit put under the bed to help a couple get pregnant and all. But this time it's dealing with Vesson parents, and they're actually using this rabbit Vesson, putting one of their feet under the bed. At the beginning of the episode, you see this teenage boy go out to meet with his girlfriend, and they're going to have some fun together, if you get my drift. And then they hear this music in the distance of an accordion, and so she leaves, and he goes and tries to check it out. And what I was thinking in that moment, I'm like, okay, he could have just, went home again. He wasn't supposed to be outside. He snuck out. That's what he should have done. He should have just gone back home. All I was thinking in the moment, like, yeah, you should have just gone back inside, because instead he goes and tries to find the guy, and the guy finds him and chops off his leg, and he dies. And I'm like, this was pointless. Like, yes, it's a horror story. In horror movies, you always have the reason why most people die in those are because they're doing something stupid. And that's the case in this case. He's like, okay, you could have just gone inside and everything would have been fine. But no, he had to go look for the guy. And I'm like, what? If I was in that situation, I would have been like, okay, someone just spotted us. I'm not supposed to be out here. I'm going back inside. My mom is probably looking for me, and I don't want her to know. We'll do this another night. Instead, he doesn't. So now you have the mother and the daughter are now trying to hide away from this guy who's trying to chop off now the sister's foot. So they're on the run. And eventually, the sister gets caught too. The question I have about that is, okay, he needed the sister because he needed another foot. But the question is, why couldn't he just take both of the brother's feet? He only took one of them. But then they reveal later on that part of the superstition is that it has to be the left foot. And so I'm like, oh, that explains a little bit why they would have to find a second victim. But it's like, okay, still, I'm like, they could have taken both feet and it still would have worked somewhat. The other question you have is, so Vesson, when they die, are supposed to unvote. But, so why is this foot still vogued? In a previous season, when they were doing the alien Vesson, where the hunter wanted to keep them vogued, was by shooting them with this steroid that keeps them vogue for a couple hours after they die. But in this case, it doesn't say he does that at all. And you clearly don't see him doing that with the first victim or with the second victim. So is this because of the type of Vesson they are? Is that the reason why these feet are still vogued? I don't know. Anyways, then the last little things I'm going to talk about in this episode is you see more cracks with Juliet's personality now as a hexenbiest. And as I said before, some of that has to do with the fact that Nick, when he figured out he didn't stay, he immediately left. And that's not on Juliet. That's on Nick for doing that. And Juliet is you see cracks. Juliet is not the same Juliet. And she's very much, she's starting to enjoy being a hexenbiest. You have it, so Adeline goes and talks to Henrietta. And Henrietta's like, oh, congratulations, by the way. And she's like, about what? And she's like, you're pregnant. And that's where we leave off this episode. I remember the first time I watched this series, and I got to that moment, I started dying of laughter because of the way she said no. It reminds me so much of Luke when Darth Vader's like, no, I am your father. And he's like, no! The same type of no. And I started dying of laughter until I very quickly realized, oh, wait a second, hold on, she's pregnant. Yeah. So guess what? Nick's gonna be a father now. And we'll talk about that more throughout the season. So anyways, continuing on. The last episode is dealing with an episode that's one of the most controversial for me, because the first time I watched it, I'm like, and the second time I didn't even watch it again. I'm like, I'm gonna skip this episode. This time watching it, I'm like, okay, maybe not. But Grimm is really good at not being woke. Just flat out saying it. And I'm one of those people that personally, while I don't agree with a lot of the woke stuff, again, I'm not going to get into politics-wise stuff, but I'm a Catholic, very strong Christian. I'm right now reading the Catechism. And the Bible right now. I always read the Bible, but all the way front to back, reading the Bible right now. And so, very strong in my faith. With that being said, the big problem with woke stuff in movies a lot of times is that it's in the same way with Christian movies, and how a lot of Christian movies are terrible because they're super preachy in the same way. And I'll make a video talking about this some other time, because I think that's a really interesting topic to talk about, is why are woke movies so bad? Same with why are Christian movies so bad? And again, it's all about the preachiness. But anyways, moving back onto this. This is one of the few episodes where there's this kind of woke topic where there's a really interesting twist in the episode where you figure out, so basically what's happening is this woman goes and picks up guys and then brings them back to her place. And then while she's in the bathroom, suddenly her husband breaks in, robs them basically, and gets them to leave. The first time this happens in the episode, the guy tries to go back for his phone and gets caught by her, and she turns into a Vesson, a slime-like Vesson who just melts him basically. And thus, he dies. And so now the police are investigating this thing. The big twist of the episode you figure out is that there is no husband, and that this Vesson is both male and female. And so it basically, when it turns into its Vesson form, it's in between. And at that point, it can turn either into a male or a female. And there's this one comment, I just can't imagine what it would be like to feel like you don't know who your true identity is. And the first time I watched, I'm like, that's the first episode. I was like, this why are you making Grimm woke? And watching it again this time, I realized that, like, I had misunderstood that moment. And, like, I actually know it's more like, imagine how confused, like, her exact line was like, imagine how confusing it would be to not know truly who you are, being both male and female. It's like, yeah, that's a difference than the trans community. It's different. And again, don't want to get into that whole stuff that much on here. Watching this, I'm like, okay, I haven't fully come to a conclusion yet, but I really feel like, I don't know, maybe it's woke, maybe it's not. Like, maybe they're hinting a little bit of, I don't know, but it was like, I think for the most part, it was handled well, and it's an interesting concept, and really, I feel like it wasn't really dealing with the trans community as much as you were just saying, like, there are sometimes, believe it or not, despite what some conservatives like to say, I'm a conservative, just gonna put that out by him, but I'm a Catholic first. I just want to say that so it doesn't sound like I'm just going after conservatives or liberals. One of the problems that conservatives runs into is sometimes they won't admit there are some people who have real struggles with this type of stuff, or people who are born not fully, you cannot not be one gender, but there are people who are born with some aspects of them that is not their proper gender. Really confusing, and they're a great topic that needs to happen with that of how do we deal with people who have that problem where, like, yeah, you might be biologically a male, but you have female body parts, and you have to be like, okay, how do I live with that? That's not a topic for me to talk about on this channel, but there's probably other people who have talked about it on different channels, and it is a real struggle people deals with. But the point is, in this episode, it's a pretty good twist. I struggle back and forth whether it was supposed to be leaning towards the woke movement, if it was leaning towards the woke movement, or if it wasn't. And really, I lean towards watching it this time around that maybe it really wasn't, just from the fact that none of the other episodes of Grimm has anything close to that. I think there's one more episode coming where you have a gay couple, but that's, I think, about it. Really, Grimm has never touched on that at all. Like, it stays completely neutral when it comes to that type of stuff. And that's really how I think entertainment should stay, somewhat. There are some stuff, like, when you're dealing with, racism, I think it can be, as I've talked about before with the Western movement, it is sometimes important to address that there is racism and stuff like that. And this is another concept, yeah, maybe you should talk about. And I don't know, it's just can be a problem sometimes in movies and TV shows when you go too much into talking about that stuff and like, okay, it's no longer entertainment. So with that being said, this episode is pretty good. Again, this last episode, I'm on the fence about some stuff with it, but outside of that, I really love how, like, I'll talk about the end of the season, more about what's going on with Juliet, but, like, the first time I watched the series, I'm like, where did this come from? What happens with her later on in the season? Watching it this time around especially, I'm really picking up on all these hints they're dropping where, like, yeah, you see these little moments where Juliet is just not Juliet, and you're like, okay, but still, like, hinting back at, oh, she's still Juliet, and then it's like, so by the end of the season when she does what she does, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, and the first time I'm watching around, I felt like it came out of nowhere. This time around, really doesn't. So yeah, I really like these episodes, and I recommend you guys check them out. If you want to see when I put out the next video on this topic, consider subscribing. And I really want to get these videos out to more people so more people can fall in love with Grimm. So consider liking the video too, so more people can see this. Thank you guys for watching. This has been the Movie Night Review with Peter Whaley, signing off.